turn our attention to talking HR with HRMAB, and there are a number of real serious HR issues in the Caribbean workforce. So it feels as if it is a common thing across people like us from this particular region, but is it? Really. And so we're joined by immediate past president of HRMAB in Nicholas Roberts. We haven't seen his face in a long time. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy crop over to you, Nicholas. Good morning.
Good morning, Joanna. Just give me the same greeting. You're a makeup artist. You just give me the same exact greeting. It has been a while. Good morning.
It has been a while, but it's good to see you, my brother.
Same here. Same here.
Let's look at some of these real issues in the Caribbean workplace. What's going on?
A lot is going on. I know you were just discussing with the team that developed the Pearly app. So I think it was great in showing in terms of the innovation, in terms of teaming within the Caribbean region and how we're using resources. And I think that is very important because one of the things that we're seeing is brain drain. And we've been discussing this for many years in terms of many of our top talent is leaving Barbados and going internationally looking for opportunities. So I think that was actually a good segue into this segment in terms of how we're using local talent to meet local needs and issues and finding ways to solve them. So that is one of the main things we're seeing in terms of brain drain. We're also seeing, a lot of mental health challenges and just workplace well-being in terms of how employers are meeting those needs and working with their employees to create an environment that is not only safe when it comes to labor laws, but psychologically and not only physically safe, but all the elements of safety that come with that. So a lot is going on. We haven't had any labor unrest in Barbados for the last few weeks, a month. Knock on wood, thank God. But a lot is going on across the world by and large, which obviously impacts Barbados as well. Yeah.
There's worker burnout as well. You talked about the brain drain, there's also worker burnout. And I know sometimes we tend to think that to avoid worker burnout, bring all the systems that will help them be comfortable. And sometimes even in those systems, you create burnout. Because I'll take the app, for instance. The expectation is that you have to respond to certain things now within a particular space of time, length of time, which puts pressure on some people to be able to do so at the same time as well. So how serious is this burnout, not just in Barbados, but in the region generally, as you collaborate with your colleagues?
I always say that people operate within a system. We're people and we bring what is going on within our lives into the workspace. And we are operating in something called the sandwich generation, whereas there are people that are taking care of their aging or elderly parents as well as taking care of raising children. And you have then persons in between that. That impacts the burnout. You're so right in terms of now we're living in a digital age. We're living in the age of AI and robotics, etc. We've talked about that ad nauseum. And all of that is impacting how people bring themselves to the work setting and the workspace. And we then, within the organizations, when it comes to HR leadership, the organization by and large have to create innovative ways to meet that burnout and meet those issues that people are solving. Many times before we've talked about using employee assistance programs in terms of having psychologists or psychiatrists on hand to deal with those problems, because whilst we in HR are there to assist the employees and support the business by and large, we are not trained practitioners in terms of helping people when it really comes to dealing with those mental health challenges. So a way of saying there are multifaceted ways of dealing with burnout. Like I said, using an EAP program is one, putting systems and processes in place to help in terms of the workflow and the work setting, using the technology by and large at play, not to displace workers, but to work with people to make the work easier for them in terms of their day-to-day tasks.
A lot of what we do is led by our culture, the practice, the way we do things. And so, but at the same time, given how the world is moving and the fact that we're now more a part of the global space, we're not just isolated to ourselves alone. Let's look at that within the context of how we communicate, how we engage with people, how do we treat our customers, how do we work with our colleagues, internal and external customers, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think customer service is a very big thing that needs focus within Barbados. Many years ago, we had the NICE program, the NICE initiative. I harken back to about a year and a half ago, I went to Canada, and it was heartwarming to see every single organization, whether it be a cafe, a restaurant, whatever I went into, customer service was top of mind, and you could tell that people were trained well and they greeted you well, even if it is that were not having a good morning, you didn't know, and it was based on how they greeted you when you walked in to that organization or into that setting. And I think that is where we need to get to within Barbados. And I always, when I have conversations on a day-to-day basis with my friends and my colleagues, and I always say the way that people respond to you is a reflection of what they're going through, both within their personal lives and within the organization. And I think people are dealing with a lot, not making excuses for it, but that is why we see the level or lack thereof of customer service that sometimes we get within Barbados. But we now have to look and see how it is that we can meet those needs and those challenges in terms of improving that in Barbados, because we're a service industry. Tourism is our biggest product, and we always talk about we want to bring people to the island and want them to come back, but we also need to think about how we treat others when it is that we do business across the island. So definitely looking at ways to develop our customer service brand. How do we develop people when it comes to customer service and meeting the needs of those people that they're serving within the various organizations across the length and breadth of Barbados.
Does that put pressure on HR though?
Because
definitely. Real pressure, because you're looking for the right candidate to fit.
Correct. And sometimes people interview very well, they say the right things, and then when they come, and obviously you do the psychometric testing, you do background checks and that type of stuff, but the rubber really hits the road when people come into your organization and they have to do the work in terms of, like I said, it isn't only customer service, but you know, the rubber hits the road when they get into your organization, and you have to see how it is that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing or not. And as you said, the onus usually is on HR to train, develop, you know, coach, which also is a leadership matter. But yes, it really falters on HR in terms of how it is that we go about developing those people to meet the needs of the organization and by and large Barbados.
And I think we have to change the mindset of the others in the C-suite as well to see, you know, what is the company we're designing here? Is this a company that's going to remain local, or is this a company that has the potential to go broader than that? And then who are the people we need to help us to drive this particular culture going forward?
Correct.
Because within the people realm, there's this thing known as gossip. You know, that can be a killer in every organization. The people like to talk. They become familiarity breeds contempt. Let's use that one blanket phrase. And so that in itself can also affect the culture within HR and the culture within the practice in the business as well. Let's talk about the loss that can come if we don't stamp that part of it out.
So I think by and large you have to determine, as you so rightly said, what the culture of your organization is. I've said it many times before, workplace culture is not throwing pizza parties or whatever the case may be. Culture is when you walk into an organization, I as a customer, how do I feel when I walk into your establishment? And then I as an HR practitioner, or even just I as an employee, when I get up on a morning, how do I feel about going into my workplace? And that speaks to the culture of the workplace. Am I going into some place where, yes, you know, people talk, that is normal, especially in Barbados, we like to gossip, fair. But how is that managed within the workplace? And when I go into the workplace, how do I feel about my co-workers? I may not necessarily like my co-workers, but I do know that if I do something wrong or someone wrongs me, will they be reprimanded and reprimanded in the right way? So, you know, stamping out those workplace practices or negative workplace practices all feeds into the culture of the organization. And I always say, people always think that HR are the culture police. You know, we're the ones that are responsible for the culture. We're responsible for setting up the framework and assisting leadership in developing the culture of the organization. But the culture of the organization comes down to leadership. How is that you want your organization to flow? What are the norms? What are the practices when it comes to customer service? When it comes to just doing business on a day-to-day basis, all of that feeds into the culture of the organization.
I want to look at this other thing, this phenomenon now, contracts. There's no longer any long-term contract, as we know, it's full-time job. And how much of that is an issue within Barbados and the region?
So we live in an age of the gig economy. Once upon a time, many ages ago, it was a case where someone would come in, you would call it a cradle to grave job. Someone would leave university or leave school and work a job for 30, 40 years. They're not saying that anymore. If it is that you can keep a resource for 2 or 3 years, you can keep them for a long time. But people are even working, you know, many jobs in terms of they're working many part-time jobs to supplement their income. So then that determines in terms of how contracts are phrased or how they're written. So there's something called a contract of service or a contract for service, and there's a differentiation between when someone is an employee and when they're a contractor. So that may be a segment for another time, but all of those things feed into how contracts are written, the rights of employees, the rights of employers. All of that is very, very important when it comes to contracting.
With rights come responsibilities as well. And so we want you to, Nicholas, we only really touched the surface.
As always.
There's so many things that are happening and changing in the workplace and the workforce in the Caribbean. It's just shifting ground right now. And so while we try to get settled, we can't get settled because things are always changing indeed.
Yep.
And so I want to thank you as always for
Thanks
coming
for
and
having me as
sharing your
always.
experience. Nicholas Roberts, who is the immediate past president of HRMAB, HRMAB.org.BB. That's where you go and you become a member. Thank you,
Thanks.
as always.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning.